So, to start off with, you you're what I would call a very, if somebody said, somebody went to Harvard, I'd say, I think Patrick's the guy. You sort of went to the military, and then you went to Harvard Business School, and then you are, as an alum, sort of now doing even more work by leading your work at HBS Online and Execed. So I would really love to hear your background as to what really got you into academics and the current work that you're doing.
Sure. I mean, it was half accidental, to be frank. But just to give you an idea of kind of the flow, as you noted, I was in the military right after undergraduate university, and I had a scholarship where the military paid for my undergraduate degree. Went in the military for 5 years, worked in the private sector for a short time, and frankly, and this is an interesting lesson I think for students everywhere, is even growing up in the U.S. In Texas, I always assumed that everybody who went to Harvard Business School, was the son or daughter of a billionaire investment banker from the Hamptons in New York. And the only reason I ever applied to HBS was because a friend of mine from the military applied and got in. And I kind of thought, well, geez, if he can get in, maybe I can get in as well. And sure enough, I did. And I was here a year after him. And after graduating, was in a startup, and then went to a manufacturing company, did some consulting, and worked for for-profit education before about close to 20 years ago now, moving back to Massachusetts, where I worked as the chief operating officer in a manufacturing company, and then did a management buyout of that company with a private equity fund after 5 years there. So I ran that company, and then it got sold to a larger company. And as these things go, it just wasn't that much fun anymore, being part of a bigger machine. And I was talking with my CFO at the time and told her that I was just ready to do something different. And she had reminded me that I had said that I might like to work at one of my undergraduate or graduate alma maters at some point. And I literally went to my office right after speaking with her and looked online and found a job posting from Harvard University looking for an executive director of a new online startup, effectively, in the business school.
Mm-hmm.
And I contacted some people I knew who were here from my time as a student still, and asked them about it. And after about 25 interviews, finally was hired in. But and part of the thing that really intrigued me about it was, first of all, it was really intriguing to go into what was essentially a startup, but within a large, very patient, I would joke that Harvard was like a very large patient venture capital fund, that gave me the space and time to kind of help build the business. I love the mission aspect of it. My education here had been very beneficial to me, and I knew it could be for others, but there were so many people around the world who couldn't come here, and this was a way to reach them. And it's a fun place to work with really good, and as you might not be surprised, by really smart people. So I've enjoyed it quite a bit.
So very interesting. So you actually found a job post and you said,
Yep.
I'm going to do the hard work of applying, and then you sort of had to do all of those interviews. And what made you apply for something which was online education? I saw that you had some background where you were involved with test prep, but that was quite a while ago, right?
Yep.
And so I would have thought that, when somebody's being recruited for the online world, I would have thought about a technologist. That would have come to my mind. But how did that process go through? How did what was Harvard looking for, and what was their vision, and how did it come together?
Right. Well, they weren't looking for me. I mean, the job description, I tell people this all the time. The job description had, like 20 bullet points of what they'd like to see in the candidate. And I may have had one, this idea of somebody, to your point, who was more of a technologist, who had experience in digital marketing and so on and so forth. And I'd been running a manufacturing company that welded pieces of metal together. It was a very different business. But it was a really important lesson into the school's credit. I think they get this, is my entire career since right out of undergraduate, because being in the military, you're thrust into these roles right away, had been in leadership roles, and maybe more specifically acting as a general manager, where I had responsibility for multiple different functions that had to kind of work in a coordinated effort to get something done. Mm-hmm. And now, with the benefit of a 30-year career behind me, I see that if you can figure out how to be a general manager and a leader, the industry is completely irrelevant. I really believe that, because most people who can get the hang of that are going to have the smarts to eventually figure out the peculiarities of a given business. But if you can be a general manager, the world's your oyster. You really do have plenty of opportunity. Now, there are some employers who don't recognize that, but fortunately, I think HBS did.
So when you're sort of looking at, how it is looked at for leadership and innovation, and I'm assuming, you get it, and sort of, they say, well, you have to run Harvard Business Online. And what was your vision at that point in time? Because you had to possibly make decisions from everything around pedagogy, technology, and it was a wide range of areas. And then you also had to convince, I'm assuming, a lot of internal constituents to, get their courses out there. So how did you get started, and how did you lay the, I would say, foundation for what it is today?
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, giving credit, the organization was already begun. It's about a year old, and so it's just, but very nascent and trying to get its footing. So a few decisions had already been made that I think were pretty critical. One was that if HBS was going to do something online, it was going to stay true to its pedagogical foundation, which is the case method. And if we're going to stay true to the case method, we need to make sure we have a technological platform that will support that pedagogy. And at the time, keep in mind, this is 10 years ago, almost exactly 10 years ago, that there weren't a lot of options. I mean, you could have gone with Coursera or edX, which Harvard was obviously involved in, but neither of them, in the opinion of the people who started HBS Online, had the tools that would allow us to stay true to that pedagogy. So the decision was made, and it was a big one, to build our own platform internally, which it's pretty risky, especially in an institution where that was not what we do. Another decision that was made, and this is an interesting one for the entrepreneurs out there in larger organizations, is to have it stood up independently and even off campus. Because if you tried to build it inside of the existing infrastructure, which has been around for 120 years at the business school and 500 years at Harvard in general, the likelihood it would get off the ground was pretty small. And this was a case where the faculty research into entrepreneurship, where what they learned was put to practice here. Large institutions often have great ambitions in doing something innovative and try and build it inside of established org structures and with the personnel who are there, and that doesn't often work. So those decisions had already been made. So when I came in, I had that to work with, which I'm very fortunate that I did have that to work with. After that, then I think the biggest thing we worried about was, what was the portfolio going to look like? And it's hard for people to remember this, but back then there was a real concern about two things. One was that you would, if you made introductory courses on the foundations of business and marketing and leadership and finance and accounting and so forth, why would anybody go get an MBA? So that was one question. And then more broadly, will this hurt the brand if you have an online program that has thousands and thousands of people participating? And I was pretty convinced that both were not going to be issues. And with respect to the brand question, first of all, we're a mission-driven institution. At Harvard Business School, our mission is to educate leaders who make a difference in the world. It doesn't say educate leaders who make a difference in the world who are in the United States or who have enough money to come in person, and fit the traditional, MBA model. And so if we believe in that mission, and we believe that what we have to teach is valuable, and I do believe that capitalism done right is good for the world. It's lifted people out of poverty. India knows this better than anybody, right? That then we have an obligation. It would be almost immoral if we didn't try and help people do more with their lives from a business perspective. And I really just kind of parroted that over and over again. It eventually took hold, and I think as we grew, people saw that, hey, we still have, whatever it is, 12,000 people apply to the MBA program every year. It hasn't changed that fact. And more importantly, our online programs, our participants tell us, are the best online experience they've ever had in education. And so, as our dean currently says, if we do everything with excellence, we don't have to worry about the brand. It is an interesting point that comes out in your question. It was very much more like being a politician and repeating the same thing over and over again, even though you didn't know for sure if it was true, but having a belief in it. And by doing that, eventually people, I think, bought into it, and not just me. I mean, other people were making this case as well. And here we are with a group that supports 40,000 students a year.
Patrick, in speaking to deans across the world, they say that the biggest challenge while innovating, especially within an organization like an education institution, is not dealing with the children, it's actually, or the students, it's dealing with the professors, because because it's always tough to get them to sort of do something completely new. So while the professors are extremely good at teaching about innovation, if you sort of ask them to innovate, there is a challenge. And a lot of institutions have dealt with it in different manners over the last few years, because I think every good institution had to go online. So how did you deal with this specific challenge? Because you're sort of leading there, you don't have a shortage of students, you still, as you said, have 12,000 people applying. And so an institution or a university starts to look around and say, what, do we really want to ruffle these feathers? Do we really want to tell our professors to do more? So that is not a very easy discussion. So how did you lead that discussion, and how did you launch all of these courses over the next few years?
Well, one thing that helped was our previous dean, Nithin Noria, famously said during an interview, I can't remember what year it was. It was it must have been about 12 years ago. Somebody asked him about whether Harvard Business School would ever do online education. And he said, not in my lifetime. He wouldn't be online. I think for some of the reasons I mentioned earlier, concerns about brand and so forth. And to his credit, though, after a year of seeing what was happening in the space and the number of institutions getting involved in online education, I think he realized that, look, if we don't do this, it's going to hurt the brand. And again, getting back to the mission, and also we have something to say in this space, and we can help people and help achieve that mission. So having the dean certainly kind of standing up and saying we are going to do this helped. Number two, the way we're organized here at Harvard Business School is think of it as every division in the school. So you think of the MBA program, online, executive education, the publishing group. Every leader of those groups and many others has a faculty counterpart. We call it a two-in-the-box system. So VG, who I mentioned earlier to you, who's my counterpart, he's in India right now. He and I work together to set strategy and communicate that strategy. And then I handle the business side of things and the staff. And I mean, this is broadly stated. We both do a little of both. And then he is the interface to the faculty and is a champion for what we're trying to do. I will say that early on, you were right in that it was a little difficult to get faculty to get interested in doing an online program. I think there was still just uncertainty around how this was going to turn out. So we did our best to find faculty who were interested in making content that we thought would have market appeal. And as I often say, one thing nice about being in a business school is even the worst idea generally has a market. There are some that have more demand than others, but it's not like we're trying to get 10,000 people to sign up for a poetry class. Nothing against poetry, but it's just the market's different, right? So, but over time, as we got traction, that became a lot easier because people saw the value and the quality of what we were doing. And now we're actually having to prioritize what we want to do because we have more supply than demand, and we don't have unlimited capacity to make every course that we might want to make. So it's a combination of leadership from the dean, this two-in-the-box management style, and just having successes which build on each other that then really help get people kind of aligned and moving in the same direction.
Can you share when you first started here in this role to now, how many students have been enrolled on a year-by-year basis? I noticed that now it's around 40,000 or so every year, but what was the number you started with?
Well, zero. I don't remember that. We can probably get back to you with this. I don't remember what it was in the first year. It was probably no more than a couple thousand, but I don't remember for sure.
Okay.
That said, it's not it hasn't been, doesn't mean it couldn't be. It hasn't been a big exponential curve, partly because, or greatly because um, there's a lot more out there, as you know probably better than anybody. There's
Right.
so much online content out there now that there's a much more noise in the market. There's much more opportunity. And look, I love what we do at Harvard Business School, but a lot of institutions do other good stuff, especially with specialization in certain areas that make it so that the student has tons of options to choose from. So, but there's no doubt that we're in we saw pretty explosive growth over that time.
Okay. So I would like to look from you, what do you see are some of the upcoming trends in the business world, be it technological, operational, or human resources related, that you feel will significantly impact business education in the coming years?
There's, I think, three that are really interrelated. One is just from the institution's perspective, how do you be more flexible? Because, to the extent that you'd have any courses or content related to technology, they're pretty quickly obsolete because of how fast things are happening. So finding a way to be nimble and to be able to provide courses and short content that really meet the need of somebody who's trying to stay up to speed in their own job, I think is a really critical factor. Second is the technology, and particularly AI. There's huge opportunity we see with respect to integrating AI into our online courses and even our on-campus courses. And in fact, there were experiments done this past fall in the MBA program where we're already using AI to facilitate students' experiences in the classroom. But a great example is, especially for us, really, when you think of that commitment to the case method I mentioned before, while we did our best with the technology that was available at the time in our online courses to try and make it case-based. And it is in the sense that, we interview protagonists around the world and we put you in their shoes and we ask you to consider how you would address an issue that they're facing. You can see a world where an AI effectively becomes like a professor in the pit, as we would say, in a classroom that has a conversation with you to test the limits of your knowledge. And in fact, I even just out of curiosity went to ChatGPT myself several months ago, and I asked ChatGPT to ask me a question about accounting, but if I got it wrong, don't give me the answer, ask me another question to help me get to the answer, which is effectively the case method, the Socratic method of give and take between professor and student. Okay. And just off the shelf, it was pretty good at doing that. Now I made it easy. I think I asked it to ask me a question. I said, ask me a question about accounting. It asked me about the function of a balance sheet, and I answered incorrectly that it keeps track of the cash in a business, which obviously would be cash flow statement. Right. But it responded, taking my instruction about not giving me the answer, it responded by saying, well, let's think about whether or not a balance sheet is about a period in time or a snapshot in time. And that reminded me of what I did learn, many MBA students have, that, balance sheet is a snapshot in time where your cash flow statement shows you what happened over a period. So it was pretty good, just like I said, off the shelf, at challenging me without giving me the answer. So, leaping ahead, we could see a world where our online programs would have integrated into them this, virtual professor effectively that can push the learning. And then finally, the other kind of trend, and I wrote about this in a Forbes column I do for their online property, is that there's all this worry about jobs being taken away. And I know I'm part of the system here, but that's going to make an MBA more valuable with respect to the leadership aspects of an MBA. The one thing that AI isn't going to be able to do, and I would challenge even very advanced AI, is to basically lead and rally people around a cause and organize those people and the technology, by the way, in a way that makes it more likely that you'll meet your objectives. So I think more than ever, understanding leadership is going to be really critical, because that's very different than like coding in Python, which AI can do pretty well already, right? So I think if you're going to arm yourself to be ready for and be valuable in the future, that leadership angle is a real important one.
So you spoke about LLMs, and now we're in the era of custom LLMs. I mean, you could sort of spin up your own large language model. And if you could feed it all of the Harvard coursework, you pretty much would get very close to having an AI professor having a conversation with a student. So Uh, how far are you pushing the bar on that? Because right now, this kind of an infrastructure is pretty much, I think, at least accessible to Harvard, and it's sort of off the shelf at this point in time.
Yeah, and with this caveat that I'm one step removed because most of this experimentation is happening in the MBA program, but there does seem to be a consensus building even among the students that where it's very valuable is not in replacing the in-class experience, but in providing opportunities for students before they ever step in the classroom to really kind of pressure test their thoughts on a given case, which then makes the in-person piece much more productive because you get past all of the kind of, if you think about a faculty member orchestrating a conversation in the classroom to try and get to some aha moment, as we like to call it. I've talked to faculty say sometimes that goes really well, and it kind of goes as you would think it would go based on what the students say in your management of the classroom. But sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes that's because it takes a while to get through the kind of the basic observations to the deeper observations. So you could see a world where AI would help people before they ever get in the classroom really get to that deeper level and then experience the exploration of that deeper level by having actual interaction with faculty and other students, sitting next to you. So I think that's hugely valuable. To the extent that AI, by the way, is also going to help us just do better research, which obviously informs then learnings, which then informs cases and helps students be better prepared. There's going to be some huge opportunities there as well.
Okay. I see that you're managing you have a broad portfolio of programs that you're looking to manage. So I'm very curious about how do you deal with the challenges and what kind of challenges do you encounter when you have such a broad portfolio of programs and making sure that it meets the needs of these different sets of students?
Yeah, well, you kind of answered your own question. The challenge is how you meet the needs of the students. And this gets back to something I mentioned earlier is how do we remain flexible so that we can quickly get programs to market that are going to help executives and managers and students today learn what they need to know today to do to apply those learnings and actually have it benefit themselves and the organizations that they're working in or for or starting or whatever the case may be. That is, you wouldn't be surprised probably to know that, these institutions were not built to be nimble. For literally hundreds of years, you kind of did the same thing and it worked. So our current dean, Shrikant Datar, has been very aggressive and is really helping us push the boundaries of what we might do with technology and digital transformation. So I think we're on the right path there. It's challenging to be sure, like any kind of organizational and cultural change. It takes effort and persistence, and you're going to hit bumps in the road. But I'm pretty happy with where we are and what we're doing in that regard. I also see a need to figure out not just what content we teach, but the modality it's delivered in. Getting back to this idea that everybody can't be on campus all the time, but maybe there's opportunities, and we already do this in some of our programs, where you have part of it's online, both synchronous and asynchronous, and part of it's on campus. Where's the demand settled out there? I'll be frank. It does seem to me that it's pretty bifurcated. Like it seems to me there's people who want to be on campus and want the whole program to be on campus. There's people who just don't have any interest in being on campus and want it to be all online. What's not clear is what's in the middle there. I think there's something there, but we haven't quite figured that out.
Okay. I love the clarity that you have. One is on your vision, and second is how do you want to deliver these programs? And you built this custom technology stack to make sure that the case study method is being delivered. Are there any more innovations that you're sort of thinking about with respect to delivering on your vision and your methodology?
Yeah, it's funny. It's not as nearly as it's mostly outside of technology, to be honest. At least it's not the driver. Things like we run some international programs now. Should we be doing more of that? How much should we be doing more? We do it very few, actually, in fact, only one. We do one program in a different language with translation. Should we do that more? Again, getting this mission aspect. There's a lot of people in the world who could benefit from what we have, but don't speak English. How do we, the other really big one is how do we I'll use a MBA term here, but do price discrimination. There are people who would benefit again from what we have, but we just charge one price around the world, which even by some standards is inexpensive. A typical HBS Online course is about $1,700. It's certainly less than most MBAs, although it's not an MBA. It's meant to be more pointed learning for somebody who needs to really get some knowledge today and apply it in their job. But there are a lot of opportunities to get more people to benefit from what we have if we can get pricing right in regions, if we can mitigate some of the troubles that come about because of currency fluctuations, all those sorts of things. I think, and certainly technology can help us solve some of those problems. But in the end, those are more macro strategic questions about how we want to grow and where we want to place our bets and how much impact we can have.
So given the fact that you're looking at online courses, you did mention this fact that, other institutions are also putting up their courses, and well, let's not even talk about YouTube. I think there is a massive amount of information coming up every hour. So what would you think are the 2 or 3 critical factors that a student should consider when selecting a course from HBS if it's online?
Yeah, I think the first is, what knowledge gap do I have and what do I need to learn? That's kind of the simple one is, and that's one of the benefits of discrete online programs like ours is that, you can just learn about negotiations if you want, or just learn about strategy if you want. The second is the cost benefit analysis. Is what I'm going to get out of this worth the cost? This is something that I have, shout from the mountaintops in the US. I think it's a problem globally, but certainly the US is a big problem. We have a lot of people who go get degrees and spend a lot of money and then realize, oh shoot, the value of that degree and of what I've learned is never going to enable me to pay off the debt I've incurred to take that program. So, and while an online program like ours is less risk because it's a lot less money, there still needs to be that analysis and no deep analysis, but just in your head, hey, is this really going to be worth it to me? Is this going to help me reach my goals? And then lastly, and this gets to something I mentioned earlier, do I need foundational skills across the spectrum, which points you to an MBA versus discrete skills I can use tomorrow? And oh, by the way, I want to stay in my job and not take time off. I should highlight, there are reasons to take time off to get an MBA. And in fact, it's a little counterintuitive. And I have a column I'm probably not going to put out until January on this, but while you don't need an MBA, for example, to be an entrepreneur, it does help give you distance from whatever you're currently doing and time to really think, to meet other people who can pressure test your idea, who might be able to join your organization and fill gaps in your own capabilities and knowledge. To help you just come up with ideas. A lot of people want to be entrepreneurs, but don't know what the business idea should be. So there are reasons to do it, but it's not necessary for sure. And there are certainly one of the largest populations we take our courses in HBS Online are people who self-identify as entrepreneurs, among others. So those 3 things: is it going to meet my knowledge and skills test? Is it benefit worth the cost? And do I need a broad foundation or a discrete skill?
So you mentioned the fact that a lot of people are identifying as entrepreneurs if they are looking to join some of your online courses. So what kind of an advice do you give young professionals navigate their careers, be it they want a career within a company, or if they're entrepreneurs looking to start their own businesses?
Yeah, one thing that I'm sure this is because I'm an old guy now, but it seems to me our younger employees and younger MBAs and people I meet are very impatient. I think the first piece of advice I'd give is be patient. That building anything, whether it's a career or a business or both, takes time if you're going to do it well. Now, I don't mean to imply that you need to not be aggressive or not push the boundaries, but most people are not going to be the CEO of a unicorn at 25 years old. In fact, 99.99999% of the world is not going to be. So you're not an abject failure if you don't get there, and there's nothing wrong with striving, but realize that good things take time. Even things we think of, Amazon was getting started when I was an MBA student, and I graduated in 1999. Now, admittedly, Jeff Bezos did okay long before now, but still, it took time to grow that business. The second thing that I think is really important is to pay attention early on about what you're good at and what you're not. Hopefully you get better at everything as you get older because you get more experience under your belt, but still you're going to be, any human being is biased toward being better at some things than others. And that's really important for several reasons. One is you become a leader, and this has been a huge lesson in my life, is surrounding yourself with people who know a lot more about a given topic than you do is critical to your own success, to the organization's success, and even to their success. So make sure you know where your own gaps are. And then third is to take professional risks. You're not going to grow if you don't, stand up in front of a group of people and give a presentation, even though it might scare the heck out of you. Taking on a project that seems complex, but where somebody's asking for volunteers, or starting a business, take those risks. And it's a lot easier, again, sounding like an old guy here, but it's a lot easier to take those risks earlier than later in your life. So don't be shy about doing them, when you're younger versus older.
Second last question. According to you, what are the 3 aspects of measuring success according to you, be it personal and professional?
Yeah, well, I think at the risk of not sounding funny, but I think everybody will understand where I'm coming from, is, maybe again, it's being an old guy, but thinking about, what will people say at your funeral about who you were? I think I've heard of people like writing their own obituary before. Again, it sounds morbid, but it really does center you around, well, what am I doing with my life? And what do I want people to say about me when I'm gone? And if they can say things that they made me laugh, or he was great to work with, or he's a great family man, whatever it may be, if all of those things you aspire to can be said, then you've probably done well. So think of the end and then work backwards from it, almost like a business problem, and hopefully it helps you inform your behavior and your goals today. The other thing that I really enjoy about being a manager is when people who I work with and who work for me succeed. And so, what have I done to help others become better in what they do, whether that be in their personal lives or their professional lives? And lastly, it's this, if everybody you work with would say great things about you, but your family would say bad things about you, or vice versa, that's probably not success. So, thinking through the trade-offs you're going to make between your work and your personal life, and it's hard, but finding a balance that gives what you need to give to those who work with and for you, and gives what you need to give to your family, I think is critical to happiness and that measure of success. So maybe a dissatisfying answer in the sense that it's not about salary or title or anything like that. But obviously, I think, and most people I hope would agree, those if you can kind of address those 3 things and be happy about how you've addressed them, I think you've done well.
I think it's a very beautiful answer, because I think this is the kind of question that vexes people all the way, even when you age even more. I think it bothers you even more.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a very straightforward good answer for this. And
I
think
would agree.
the people who wrestle with it, I think they end up getting to a good place, because at least they're wrestling with it.
Yeah.
I would say a lot of people just give up.
Yep. Agreed.
All right. Now the trickiest question. You must be prepared for this, but still will try.
I am.
If you had to explain what an MBA is in less than 10 words, what would it be?
This was a great question, by the way, but fortunately I did have this one in advance, and my answer is a toolkit to maximize personal, professional, and societal value.
All right. Now I need a new answer.
You need a new answer?
I know. I told you it was going to be a Google. Yeah. You think you think I haven't done this to other deans? You think everybody comes prepared until I ask them for the next answer?
in less than 10 words.
Yes.
I think when I look back on my own MBA, this doesn't count to the 10 words, this preamble, by the way.
No, please speak your heart out.
I really think of the people. I don't remember really much of the specifics I learned. That's a little disingenuous, but you know what I mean? I mean, if you asked me to calculate net present value, I'd probably have to go look it up again and to do the math. But what I do remember is the people I met who not only became wonderful friends, but ended up being colleagues in business, I make the point that and I'm not exaggerating here, but every single job I've had since I left Harvard Business School came through a connection at Harvard Business School. So that, and it's not peculiar to Harvard Business School. I think it's common to MBA programs, particularly in person. I mean, it certainly can happen online, but particularly in-person programs. So if in less than 10 words, I'll make it just one word. It was about the community.
Yeah, I think Michelle disagrees. Michelle is like, I think Patrick can do better. Michelle, can you please,
somewhere between the first and the last, yeah.
Basically, she's saying, don't give a one-word answer and don't give a 20-word answer.
Third time's the charm.
Oh gosh.
Supportive colleagues you have, and
Yeah, I do think that we do grossly underestimate, well, maybe we don't since COVID. Like our in-person executive education has seen very high demand since COVID. And I do think there's something about human beings. I know there's something about human beings that needs that kind of face-to-face interaction. It doesn't have to happen all the time, and it doesn't have to happen through an MBA program, but it matters in business and personal life. I often point out there is a reason that many people consider solitary confinement the cruelest form of punishment, to a prisoner, for example. Being alone is not healthy or good for society, for individuals. And to be able to be in a community where you have a common interest in this wonderful thing called business, certainly from my perspective, I think is really, really compelling.
Michelle, did he give us a 10-word answer? I don't think he did.
Don't put me on the spot.
Do you think we should just let him off the hook for this?
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah,
I mentioned that part of my job I mentioned is like being a politician, so I'm just answering the question the way I want, no matter what the question was.
I like that approach. I like that. All right, Patrick, I think that's all the questions we have for you. I really enjoyed this because I know a couple of your answers were a little politician-y, if I might. I know it's not a word, but the fact is, I love your answers about the vision. I love the fact that I think you're not in an easy job. I think, especially leading academics in a top institution of the world, I think it's possibly one of the toughest things to do because none of them would want to listen to you. But the fact is, you've been able to get that from 0 all the way to 40,000, and you continue to grow. I think that's a very commendable achievement. So,
well, it's kind of you to say, although I mean this, and this is not a political answer. There's just amazing people around me here, and they do a lot more to make that happen than I do. So, but I appreciate it.
But fantastic, and so great talking to you, and thank you so very much for coming in so early in the morning.
Likewise, it was a pleasure. Let me know if you're ever in Boston.
I will. Thank you. See you.
Bye.
Bye.